What truly makes a horror game scary? Horror games can be frightening in a lot of familiar ways, through atmosphere, sound design, and long moments of tension that keep you waiting for something to happen. Generally speaking, when those elements come together, they can be effective no matter who's playing. But there's one aspect of horror that's always affected me more than anything else. It's the fear of being powerless. It's the slow understanding of horrors you just can't control. The realization that no matter how much you might learn, no matter how prepared you think you are, you're still being pulled deeper into something that won't let you go. It's a horror trope that fascinates me more than any other because it's the exact opposite of how fear works in real life. Most fear pushes us to escape. It tells us to run, to fight back, to regain control. This kind of horror does the opposite. It teaches you that escape was never an option. Instead of relying on flashy jump scares like a traditional horror game might, this approach focuses on the psychological side of horror instead. Not how can I scare you for a moment, but rather how can I make you feel trapped for an eternity? How can I make you slowly understand that what you're facing isn't something you can just overcome but only endure? World of Horror is a game that I think fits this idea perfectly. The way it's able to mesh together these points to make this psychological adventure. Let's talk about it. Hello, I hope you're all doing very well. Today I want to talk about World of Horror, a 2023 cosmic horror RPG. I came across World of Horror while searching for a new game to play and its style immediately caught my eye. I had never played a game that functioned like this one before. The game blends roguelike, adventure, and visual novel elements into its own standalone experience. And it's heavily inspired by the works of Junji Ito, a pillar of the horror genre. But to be honest, I had never really experienced this style of horror before. So going into it, I genuinely had no idea what I was getting myself into. And the more I played, the more obsessed I became. With each playthrough, I started to understand what made this game uniquely horrifying. From its one-bit visual style, to its mechanics, to its unconventional take on the roguelike formula, World of Horror works on a gameplay and visual level. But what fascinated me the most wasn't how it played, but the theme it was telling. In this video, I want to give my own assessment of the main theme I took away from World of Horror, and how it turns a simple run into a never-ending nightmare. If that sounds interesting to you, then why not like and subscribe? I make analysis content like this for a ton of different games and would love for you to join me. So with all of that finally out of the way, let's dive into World of Horror. The decade is the 1980s and our hometown of Shiokawa, Japan is going through it, to say the least. What was once a quiet town in the outskirts of Japan is now a land filled with cults, disappearances, and these morbid creatures who are terrorizing the land. The advancement of technology in this era brings comfort but also new threats as well. Even these old gods who ruled the land eons ago have started to wake up. We don't know why any of this is happening, but what we do know is that we're not going to sit around and do nothing as the life we know starts crumbling. We grab any weapons, spells, clues we can find and head on to solve the mystery of this world. On the surface, World of Horror feels like a game about resistance, about gathering weapons, learning spells, piecing together clues, doing something before everything around you completely collapses. And at first, the gameplay seems to support that idea. Your goal is simple: finish the 5 mysteries that the game hands to you. These mysteries are randomly generated every run, meaning no 2 playthroughs are exactly the same. Each set slowly builds towards the game's climax, the awakening of an old god, which is also randomly chosen. On paper, this loop is straightforward, even fun. It keeps the game feeling fresh, and it gives you the impression that preparation matters. But that sense of control doesn't last very long. Every run begins the same way, with nothing. No clues, no items, no understanding of what's coming next. And while that might seem obvious for a roguelike, World of Horror uses it deliberately. The game just isn't asking you to play, it's forcing you to learn its world from scratch every single time. One of World of Horror's biggest gameplay functions is the dialogue choices you can make. While exploring a mystery, you will come across dozens of interactions, and those interactions will give you choices you can make. Picking the correct choice can aid your adventure in little ways or big. They can also give you disadvantages in the world. This is the game's way of world building. Trial and error. You pick up knowledge every run, so if you get that same encounter next time, you can understand how to use it to your advantage. And that loop falls exactly into what I think is the scariest thing about World of Horror. In your mind, you're thinking that every run is progressing you into something. Whether that's gathering info, learning the best mechanics to use, or just gaining experience in general. But what it's actually teaching you is that overarching evil isn't going anywhere. One of my personal favorite examples of this is in one of the many dialogue moments in the game. Through a random encounter, you can get a dialogue option called Taking Its Toll, and it reads, "You were planning out your next steps. It got you thinking about everything that needs to be done, and then everything that could happen, and every awful thing that's already happened. And and now all you can think about is just how scary and horrible things really are. The two options to choose from are to cry or push through. It's a very grounding moment in this chaotic world, but it's also one that is needed. In my personal playthrough, I picked the option of pushing through, and the game punished me for it, with lowering one of my stats. You really are pathetic. You wipe your eyes and just try to keep going, but no matter how hard you try, you can't get those thoughts out of your head. The option to choose to cry also has its own outcomes. One can result in a stat buff and the other in a stat nerf. Crying can both succeed and fail, but even the success comes with its own risk, because it tells the viewers that emotional vulnerability is treated like a risk in this world. Cry all you want, this nightmare continues on. This one piece of dialogue that can get easily overlooked teaches the player so much about how the game treats its own narrative. It knows the direction it wants to take you and it does it with ease. Now, I've talked a lot about how World of Horror communicates its themes through its dialogue and story, but it doesn't just stop there. One of my favorite things about the game is how it communicates that same feeling through its user interface, the space you're forced to exist in for the entire run. At first glance, the UI is overwhelming. There's a lot happening on the screen at once. Tabs, numbers, meters, statuses, and very little guidance on what actually matters. It takes time to understand and even longer to feel comfortable with. And that discomfort is intentional. The game takes place in the 1980s, as we stated before, a period where technology was rapidly advancing. New systems promised convenience and control, but for many people, they also felt unfamiliar and intimidating. World of Horror takes that idea and exaggerates it greatly. The interface isn't designed to feel clean or empowering, it feels cluttered on purpose. Cold and mechanical, like you're operating something you don't fully understand. The pixelated text, the blocky menus, the way information is constantly presented but rarely explained. It mirrors the same feeling the game creates elsewhere. You're given tools but never clarity, data but not certainty. It's another way the game makes you feel overwhelmed, not through monsters or dialogues or anything else we talked about before, but through the act of simply playing it. World of Horror isn't just about the UI and dialogue, it's also about the many unique characters you play as. Each run gives you the opportunity to play as one of the game's 14 playable characters, and each of them having something unique about them. Whether it's certain dialogue choices or different stats or certain abilities, each of them can be found useful in one way or another. But there is one character in particular that not only caught my eye on my first initial playthrough, but one that helps feed the game's theme to a T. Mimi, the med student. Now you might be asking yourself, what exactly is so special about Mimi? She doesn't have the best statistics, the best abilities, or anything to run home about. But the importance of her doesn't rely around her gameplay strength, but rather her unique character status effect, Mimi's obsession. This is a status effect only given to Mimi. It lowers the max reason of the player by 20%, and in the picture she is honed in on something, rubbing her face with blood. I felt something was off about this, so I did some research. Mimi's obsession can be linked to the work of none other than Junji Ito himself. In one of Ito's many horror stories, he has one that is called Mimi's Tales of Terror. These short stories from Ito are about a girl named Mimi who can't seem to escape these supernatural occurrences that are happening around her. Interesting. These short stories tell the many tales of Mimi, being unable to escape the horrors around her. Over time, she gets almost obsessed with them. She is powerless against the many deities that surround her every day, and as a result, she becomes obsessed with them. That is no different than the Mimi we play as in World of Horror. Mimi in World of Horror can be chalked up to a simple nod to Ito, but I like to think it's more than just that. She's genuinely my favorite character because I love how she's the only one that is unable to look away from the horrors in this world. Up until this point in the video, we have gone over a lot of the game's mechanics, thematics, and personality that makes World of Horror what it is. But let's take a second to really look at the end goal here, conquering the old god. As I've said before, the game's mission is to build up clues and beat these mysteries to unlock your pathway to the old god who's been looming over you for the entirety of the game. Each mystery you solve gives you a key. That key is then used to unlock the floors of where the old god is. Where is that old god exactly? On the outskirts of Shiikawa, sitting in a lighthouse, waiting. You've spent your entire playthrough building up to this point, using the knowledge the game has given you, the trials and tribulations you endured. They can all end at the top of this singular lighthouse. But why a lighthouse exactly? Remember how I mentioned that part of World of Horror's fear factor is that it uses the idea of being powerless against you. It makes you feel hopeless in this dying world. Yet the game ends you in a lighthouse, buildings that are known to symbolize rays of hope and safety, acting as beacons to the ships out at sea, just as it's an act of hope to the player, thinking that beating this old god can restore the world once more. And that's where World of Horror makes its final move, because the closer you get to that lighthouse, the more the game quietly reminds you of something uncomfortable. This isn't a final boss in the way games usually promise one. This isn't a problem you solve. It's something you confront. The old god has been watching over you the entire time. We know this because at the top of the lighthouse, a single telescope pans over the world, silently observing. As you climb, puzzles appear. Not challenges in the traditional sense, but recollections of your journey. Each step up is a step through memory. Each solution of a reflection of what you've endured. Climbing higher and higher, your sanity and stamina waning. You look at the dark clouds swirling around the lighthouse and wonder, did I arrive too late? Your mind races with possibilities, fear and exhaustion tangled together. Then, the fog lifts. Light pierces the building once more. Relief washes over you, and you collapse to the floor. In an instant, the old god is no more. There is no final boss battle or some ulterior motive. You finish the journey and you can let out a sigh of relief. At least, that's what is shown to you. I believe that World of Horror in its totality is a game about being powerless. A game that is impossible to escape. I think it's super ironic of the game not having this incredibly difficult boss battle at the end, because the game already did the heavy lifting throughout. Getting thrown into the world immediately, the chilling user interface, the countless amounts of dialogue that shows the player's decaying mind state. Learning this world gave the player nothing but hope that it'll help them fight back, but the more you learn, the more you realize there's nothing you could do to stop this world of horror. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed, why not like and subscribe? I make videos like this for a ton of different games and would love for you to join me. But that's all for me. Thank you everyone for watching, and goodbye.